The only way to completely eliminate scent would be to enclose yourself in a bubble.
Yeah.
And try shooting a bow from a bubble.
You've kind of developed this system that, like in the way that you hunt, like everybody I talk to, and you know me, like I ask everybody a lot of questions because I like to learn from people. I like to understand like how they look at the world, whether it's hunting or whatever. I like to look at how they look at the world differently than, you know, what the norm is or what the whatever. And it's like one of the things with you guys is like you're constantly hunting all the time, and everybody else is like, well, you only get 2 sits, you know, on a farm, and then that buck's gone or whatever. Talk about like how your pattern for like finding a big deer that you want to go after. Like, so like season comes in.
Are we talking about sitting now? Like how often we're hunting? Is that what you're getting at?
Really just the whole process of like finding a big deer and kind of starting to understand them.
Well, I personally think it all depends. It depends on the situation. If you're at a home farm and you're running a lot of trail cameras, or if you're scouting a brand new piece, or I mean,
time of 5-day trip.
Yeah, time of year, all that stuff really has a factor, and I would look at it different in any situation I'd be at. I mean, sometimes you don't have the benefit of just pulling a card out of a trail camera, and you gotta, you know, go old school and actually look for sign that a deer's there and get in the woods. So. All the above, whether it's running cameras, you know, a lot of guys I know, I don't do as much as I used to, but road scouting, just driving around. Like, you know, we talked the other week and you were blasting a buck in the bean field, you know, so, I mean, finding the deer that's there, it's just a matter of doing it, I think, just.
All right, so once you've kind of found that there's a big deer, okay, talk about like, I mean, you sit a lot trying to kind of learn these deer. Are those observation sits, or those?
Well,
like,
that's going to depend on the situation too. So I've always, you know, and it probably stems from, you know, how the old man was, but I'm not that patient of a guy too, so I can't spend, I've never spent, I don't think, more than maybe 4 hours tops in a stand at one time. Like I just, and that was probably the longest, like by far. I mean, it's usually quick sits, you know, hit that prime time in the morning, hit the prime time in the evening. And I've always had most of my luck scouting more than I actually hunt. So it was something that I grew up watching Dad do. I mean, I just, so I think the more intel you can gather and make those sits, you know, count a little bit more, I think that really makes a difference. Because there's so many guys I know too that just get out to get out. I don't get out to get out. I don't like doing that. If you're in the woods, I think personally, if you're sitting in a stand and you don't think it's going to happen, well, get the hell out of the stand. Like, what are you even doing? Like, yeah, you can get lucky, but consistency doesn't come with luck. You know, you got to make it happen.
How do you keep that up for 20 days in a row? Like,
it honestly, it's, and this is another thing
too.
Do
you just always feel like you're one step closer every hunt? I mean,
and not always, and that's why you should feel that way. Sometimes it's a waiting game, and like I said, that all depends on the situation. So, I mean, if you're in a, you know, I also know guys who hunt the same stand for like 4 weeks, you know, I mean, just every day, and they kill a good one every year because they know that sooner or later something's, well, that's not my style either. I can't do that.
Yeah.
So it's just about, obviously you're going to take intel from your sits and what you're going in your original game plan. If your game plan is to wait them out or what that may be, but as far as sitting every day and not getting burnt out, is that what you're asking? Or
yeah, I'm just kind of curious. Is like, okay, you say that every time you should go out, you should feel like it can happen.
Yeah, you should be in the game. Now
I know that you sit a lot, and I can't
Yeah.
believe that you think every single time. Like,
oh, I try to always put myself in a position to where, now a straight up observation post is a little different story, but I don't do typically many of those.
That's what we were talking about when we were in Missouri last year. It's like,
yeah,
I want to be able to observe,
but I also want to kill.
Know that.
See, like I've always, you know, said too, like, do you want to see deer or do you want to kill deer? So like, it's great, you know. Some people love seeing 10 shooters out in the field every night, and they're content with just seeing them and watching them. And I'd rather move in, not see any deer, and then kill the one that comes through that I want to kill. So it's But I believe that I put myself in the best position every time I sit to potentially kill that deer. Even if it's not exactly where I want to be, I still, if it's a certain deer I'm after, I know he's in a certain area, well, I'm not going to go hunt a different area.
One of the questions, like, I was asking a lot of the guys, just to kind of get an understanding of their style, of, like, the way they like to hunt, is if you could pick, like, of the 3 kind of main patterns that a deer has, like his bedding pattern, his feeding pattern, bedding movement, feeding movement, and his breeding movement. Like, you know every year, like, what a buck kind of does in the rut, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know at certain times of the year where he's going to be feeding. You know where he's going to be bedding. If you had to pick, like, the most important that you're wanting to know, obviously you want to know all of them, or at least bedding and feeding.
Yeah, that'd be great, yeah.
But if we don't, like, what do you think is the most important to capitalize on a deer? Like, say he's not even feeding on you, but he's bedding on you, or he's bedding somewhere else, but he's feeding on you. Like, to you, what's the most important?
Bedding, hands down. I personally think the bedding is the most important. I mean, you can kill a buck on if he's coming to your food source, and you can hop in there on an evening post. I mean, you can kill him easily. But as far as just like an overall standpoint, something I would like to know right off the bat. I mean, it may sound weird, but I personally believe if you know where a deer's bedding and you know where he's eating, that deer should be dead. Like that's kind of how I look at it, you know. So if in bedding areas to me are kind of like a really cool deal, especially when it is like an established bedding area, because if you got that, you know, that's that area for a reason, and you learn to manipulate that spot. And there's plenty of deer that I've killed that I don't know where they were bedding. If I knew where they were bedding, I would have killed them a lot earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just one of those. So hands down, I think the bedding is I think that's one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle.
How often do you think the deer bed consistently like that? Do you think
it is not all the time. I know that. I mean, that's a.
Well, do you think that a deer will use a bed for a while, like a certain time of the year, a certain part of the rut, like?
Yeah, I mean, the buck I shot a couple years ago, Mr. Clean with the big drop time, he, the reason I was able to get on him late season and get him down was I found where he was bedding, and where he was bedding was nowhere near where he bedded throughout the season, but the weather got really cold. He moved closer to a food source. He established that little spot with his group of does, and that's where he was. He was held up there. So, yeah, I think that definitely changes.
And so, how did you figure that out?
Scouting. You got to be looking. You have to
scouting. Okay.
You have to stay
Be specific.
Current.
What did you do? Like, talk about the day that you kind of figured that out, right?
Okay.
So what were you doing?
Well,
like,
I noticed
walking.
I noticed an abundance. Well, yeah,
I was scouting a lot of different things. Like, I was running cameras. I was.
Oh yeah,
you know
yeah.
I mean?
When I say scouting, I mean literally, you know,
pounding ground.
Pounding ground, just seeing what's going on. You know, getting a first-hand, you know, visual, you know, of sign in the woods. So, I mean, the night before, I noticed, and you start to notice these things, areas that get hit better in different types of years. But, you know, we leave food plots up late, you know, for that reason. When it gets frigidly cold, I mean, this was January, it was very cold. You know, there was a big influx of these deer that were hitting this particular food plot, you know. I mean, good tracks in the snow. I mean, just, you know, pounded trails. So, well, scouting in the snow is cakewalk. I mean, you know, everything's like glowing. So, I mean, I just kind of looked at a couple ridges where I thought they'd be holding up, and they were, and I moved in and I killed them. I knew he was coming from that ridge. I knew where he was going to feed. So if you could figure those things out,
was there some kind of pinch there? I mean, was there a trail you saw? Like,
yeah. So I mean, well, I knew where the trails were going. I knew where he was bedding. I got as close as I possibly could to the transition where my wind was good, and they wouldn't bust me in the food, and they wouldn't bust me in the bed, and I can get in there safely, and then and that was it. I mean, I personally feel that the biggest thing. And it took me years, like, the biggest thing I think people get hung up on is manipulating the area properly. Like, some people just, especially bedding areas, like getting in there and actually there's some guys who end up finding that honey hole, and they find that established bedding area, and it's, you know, just reeks of a mature deer, and it's just he's there,
And then you just mess it all
and they
up.
screw it up because they don't do it properly, they don't set up properly, they don't access it properly, or what it may be. So, I mean, and I think that just comes with doing it, but being able to really analyze the situation and read the sign and see what's going on there. Where's he coming from? How's he accessing this bedding area? Where do you think he's going? So, I might have got off on a little tangent there, but yeah, bedding for sure.
Yeah. In your process, how often are you scouting?
Every day.
Every single day.
Yeah.
That you're hunting.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you don't get a scout. Sometimes you got to get to the stand, and
So
you
that's
got
what
other obligations.
My question is though, like, is it just like a free for all? Like I'm just walking the same stuff I walked yesterday, or like you're kind of moving it around, like really, like okay, well I didn't see anything over here, and I know, like, talk about that a little bit.
Well, that's all great too. I mean, I could scout the whole south, 40 acres of this farm, and it could be ice cold, and a day later it could be hot. So it changes. That's why I've never been a lot of these guys. They pound the ground so much in summertime, in June, July, August,
Yeah.
and they're going nuts, and they're setting up their stands, and they're doing a lot of this hard work and this time consuming stuff and pressure in the area. When, man, I mean, the patterns are going to change. Sometimes there's iconic pinches and stuff like that, but you gotta hunt the sign when it's current. I mean, it sucks being a step behind.
How many times, like, do you think you have a deer figured out and you're just there a day late and he shifts? Like, does that happen a lot?
Yeah, I mean, it does happen. I mean, it like I said too, honestly, one of the, the great thing about it is you're constantly learning, you're constantly, figuring out, whether it be a farm or just deer in general, or movement patterns. And I mean, one of my best memorable years hunting I can think of was a year I didn't kill the buck I was after, but like just chasing that deer. I mean, I was a step behind all year, the whole year. And then, at the end of the season, it kind of was, I seen the writing on the wall, like I could have killed him. Like that was the spot to be. I missed it at the time. And so, I mean, you're constantly learning, but that happens a lot, man. Not every deer is in a set, robot pattern action. I mean, it just doesn't, or, it can be different.
Yeah. How many, we were talking dates earlier, because you were talking about October 22nd, just kind of randomly, but like for you, like what's your favorite time? Early season, like the build up, like the pre-rut, Halloween, the rut. I know you're not a big fan of like the actual rut, but like is it late season? Like what, talk about your favorite time and why.
Yeah, I definitely do not. Hunting the rut is fun. It's enjoyable because of the action and the deer movement, but when you're really trying to, when you talk about just killing a specific deer or just success rate in general, I mean, depending on the farm too, though. I mean, if I'm on a farm that's sitting on a river system where I get, just slobs cruising every year in November, well, yeah, that might be the time I kill my good ones, but I don't look at it like that. It's better to, I mean, they're running everywhere. There's no rhyme or reason to anything. I mean, they're just, I've never really liked it,
Yeah.
But it's fun, but as far as being successful, I think early is your best time. Early and late,
Yeah.
Late if you have the food and you have the, where they're wintering and stuff like that. But it's another thing. It comes down to the property you're on, or what you've been, the intel you have already. I mean, if you're letting a deer grow and you were watching him for a couple of years and he's a homebody deer that where he's bedding, it will, being there opening day, and that's your favorite time.
Yeah.
But if you're if you're waiting on a ghost you don't even know is on your farm, then maybe you'd want to hunt the rut. But I don't know. I guess there's more than one answer, because like we talked about, mid
right,
to
so what has been the most successful for you? Like
early season for sure. Like first 3-4 days of season.
really?
Yeah, I think I've killed good deer early like that, just getting right on them. And then also I'd say like that 22nd of October.
Mm-hmm. And you say early season, that's like after the 1st of October though, right?
Yeah, like so it'd be like October 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, like the first few days of the season.
Gotcha.
I mean, but it all changed, man. It's so we had a cold front come in on October 5th, and it was better than any day in November you could ever sit. I mean, if you get if the weather, that's why we talked about factors. There's so many different factors that make these deer crazy. So, I mean, it's not just, oh, I only hunt cold days, or only when the moon's like this, or only when the pressure's, I mean, you can get crazy with it, but, I mean, a simple cold snap in October could be your best hunting, period.
Yeah.
I mean,
what do you do for scent control?
Scent control? So, my scent control would be play the wind.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
100%.
100%. I mean, if that's the number one thing with any setup, with any hunt, with anything. I mean, a whitetail, you cannot beat a whitetail's nose. In my opinion, you cannot beat it. All the scent lock, all the ozonics in the world. I mean, in a vacuum, ozonics would be great, I think. And I know guys who use it a lot and have success with it because it does mask a little scent or whatever. But I've always been
But there's so much extra effort there.
I like to stay as light as possible, stay as minimal as possible. And if you play the wind right, you shouldn't have to worry about an ozonic.
So do you hunt on field edges a decent amount? Because one of the things I always find is like in a transition type area, you can play the wind great. Deer pass by, as long as there wasn't some kind of swirling wind there, you're great. But it seems like on those field edge setups, when you're going to have a lot of like does and yearling bucks coming out the first couple hours, it's almost like, at least in the areas that I hunt, it just seems like it's almost impossible to sit there for an hour with does in the field without just getting that little swirl, you know what I mean? And
it honestly, it depends on, and that, there again,
because I'm looking around at the terrain here and I'm like, how do they not get swirling winds here? Like,
there's plenty of swirling winds here, but it all comes down to, again, the situation you're in, what field edge. So yes, I do hunt field edges, to answer the first question, and a lot of people, I think they mistake playing the wind for having some magical wind where you're not going to get busted by any deer. Well, it's like setting up a stand. You're never going to get all the trails.
Yeah.
You never will. Get as many as you can get.
You're always going to have that buck that skirts around the edge.
No,
or whatever.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you need to pick the right trails.
I'm just saying you have that when you're setting up a stand, you have that anxiety that's like, oh, he's gonna skirt me right up there. Well, now he's gonna get me over there. You know what I mean? There's that.
I don't get that anxiety.
I get that.
Oh yes, yeah.
I think a lot of guys get that.
Yeah. See, and that's where you need to be more confident and decisive on what spot you're picking. Now, when you talk about a field edge, there's such a big. There's some field edge spots that I don't hunt because I can't get a win, like you said. Now, there's an abundance of deer coming out at all different areas of this one section of the field. You can't, and there's spots that sometimes you can't. I mean, to play the wind efficiently, you can't hunt. Or
so how do you figure that out? A couple hunts,
how do you figure that?
How would you make that decision? It's like you go in there and try it, and it's like, well,
no. Well, you can. Yeah, sometimes that's the worst case. You go in there and you get just cracked all night, and but so you either try it, but so with that area, or let's just give an example because it's so hard. Like I said, it's so situational. If you got let's say you got this giant field, and all the deer are typically coming out in one area, but there's 15 trails. It's so hard to say because you have to scout the particular area, and by scouting it, you're gonna know. I mean, and seeing what the deer do. Maybe you do an observation, but I feel like I'm going in circles because I can't give an answer to a specific. Like if it was like, hey, how do I hunt this spot? This is what they're doing. I'd be like, oh, well, you can't because if this is what they're doing, you can't get a win for that.
Yeah.
But I can't think of something off my head if that makes sense right now.
I'm saying, so say you have like a 10-acre field.
Yeah.
Right. There's deer coming out from all sides of the sucker. Can you hunt a field like that? I mean,
that's when you look at it and you say, okay, well, where's the deer I want to kill coming out? And then
how do you figure that out?
And you hunt that deer.
Say we're going to Illinois, right? We got a 300-acre farm there.
Mm-hmm.
Never stepped foot on it before. And you've had situations like this, like you tag out somewhere else and it's like, If I need somewhere else to hunt, through connections, like you get something, you go out there and you don't have any intel, and you got a week or however long, like what's the first step there?
Scout. Go check it out, man. I mean, you got look around, find the best sign, and get on it. I mean, see that's a whole different scenario now. Now you're not on the farm, you don't know anything. You got to pound the ground, man. You got to figure out where those deer are. So get out there, look for sign, hunt the best sign, and then once you're done hunting, and then just keep rolling. Don't get stuck up on the same spot. I think that's a big thing too. Just keep bouncing around. Now, if you run into something that you like, or if there's some sign that you're like, oh my god, like we're talking. Let's say there's just shredded trees this big, with gouges freaking 4 inches deep in them. Well, you might have an inkling there's a good deer there, right? So it's again situational.
But how much do you ever worry about like alerting deer that you're there?
Not really.
No?
I mean,
do you think that that's overplayed a little bit? Like,
yeah, I do.
Yeah,
I do think people are too timid. I think people are too. And some people hear that, and then they say, "Oh well, I can go do whatever I want now," and they start freaking, taking chainsaws and cutting trails through the. It's a different story, It's there's a difference between, leisurely scouting the woods, and
just
tromp and shit.
riding 4-wheelers.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just different.
Well, I think too, like deer live with predators. Like they live with coyotes, right?
Yeah, they're used to that.
They smell a coyote track. It's not like it alerts them to anything. You know what I mean? And how many times have you gone out and scouted a field edge, and then you go back and hunt that evening, and you watch deer walk right past your track from earlier that day, and never even pay attention to it?
Yeah, I think that's. Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's overplayed, and like I said, sometimes you get. Again, it's situational too. I feel like I've said that a lot, but it comes down to some deer are more cagey and aware than others.
Yeah.
Some deer have it's like us. Everybody's got their different personalities. Some deer are easier to kill than others. Some deer are easier to figure out than others. But going back to topic scent control. If you are not playing the wind, people think it's crazy when they even ask too, like, oh, what kind of what do you use with your clothes or whatever? What kind of scent precautions? I'm like, oh, do you bury your clothes? Do you? And I'm like, no, I don't bury my clothes. I don't wash my clothes with perfume scented. I use a scented free wash for my clothes, but I've been I use Dial soap when I wash my body, and I think it's funny because that's a scented soap. It's not a scent-free soap. And it's just. The idea being, if you play the wind, you don't got to worry about it.
Yeah.
It's not. See, I firmly believe that a deer is going to smell you. If a deer gets your scent, I don't care if you smell clean or if you used unscented soap.
Yeah. And
they know what
respirator that you're breathing through.
They know what you smell. I read a study on that once about how crazy their nose are and their scent receptors or whatever. However, that's
70
worded.
million more scent receptors than a Labrador Retriever.
Exactly. And you think about a nose that powerful. I don't care what scent lock clothes you're wearing. I don't care what you're washing with. I don't care if you buried your clothes for 5 months. Just a human has an odor that a deer can smell.
Yeah.
So why waste your money? Why waste your time? Why rip your hair out and go so crazy and over the top with these scent control procedures? The only way to completely eliminate scent would be to enclose yourself in a bubble.
Yeah.
Try shooting a bow from a bubble.
Honestly, at the end of the day, the guys who truly kill the biggest deer that I know, like Ben Rising and you and your dad, will never just be like, yeah, here's what bucks do and they do it all the time.
Yeah, because you can't say that. It's just not. It's not true.
Yeah. Talk about why you hunt mornings in October, whereas it's sacrilege now. Everybody talks about it being sacrilege to hunt mornings, and you just can't do it.
Do they?
Dude, that's it now. You can't hunt mornings in October anymore.
Why not?
Because you just there's too much risk there for too little reward.
Here's the thing. These guys are guys who typically are more comfortable hunting in the evening. See, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, these same guys are hunting mornings in November.
Well, that everybody
You know what I mean?
just wants to be in the woods in November. There's a craze about
No
that.
doubt about it.
Okay, to answer your question, I have no idea why people would not hunt the mornings in October, because I've killed probably 75% of my deer in the morning in October.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a lot of guys like to hunt evenings.
Yeah.
I personally think it's because guys don't like getting up in the morning.
Yeah.
I mean, is that weird to assume? I'm not going to put anybody in a bubble, but...
Well, I guess the thing for me is, like, not understanding, like... Here's the reason, all right? It's the fear of, all right, I'm going to go hunt a bedding area. Because I'm not going to hunt a food source in the morning.
Why not?
I don't know. Do you do that?
Food sources are great to hunt in the morning.
Yeah, but how do you get into them without bumping deer off of them? Like, how do you know when they're going to be there and when they're not? That's the question.
But you got... Okay, look at... You have to get in your stand, right?
Yeah.
So get in your stand. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't worry about the deer that you're going to bump off getting in your stand. Because if I started worrying about deer, I was going to bump to get to my stand.
What kind of food sources are you hunting in the morning?
Anything.
Like big open fields?
Yeah, you can hunt. I've hunted big open fields.
But aren't the deer out in those big open fields when you're going in the mornings?
Well, if it's a really big open field, you can... Typically, they're not... That's the thing. Like I said, like I talked about it before, and that's probably the biggest thing. Just like I said with setting up a stand for the trails, you're never going to get all the trails. You got to pick the one that's right. Same thing with the wind. I mean, the wind's got to be right for the deer you're hunting or the position you're in. You can't just... You know, there's always going to be some deer downwind somewhere that'll probably get your scent, but, you know, you have to use that situation. Just like a field edge. If you're going to get in, if you know that field edge is where you need to be hunting, then get in there and hunt that.
But how do you know?
By scouting.
Okay, I go scout. How do I know by scouting that field edge is where I need to be tomorrow morning? You know what I mean? Like, my logic would tell me...
You know... What would your logic tell you?
That I need to be there tomorrow evening.
Tomorrow evening?
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you would hunt that...
Naturally, I'm thinking, okay, here's a field edge. I'm going to hunt that in the evening.
Yeah, so you hunt that in the evening and hunting in the morning, too. I mean, there's always been a rule of thumb.
So when you're, like, how are you accessing, like, a field edge stand in the morning?
So
through the timber?
Let's go back to basics. So, I mean, and this is something that I've learned from the old man just by watching him over the years, but we've always, and ever since I've came up now, especially on like a new farm situation, the protocol would be scout, hunt morning, hunt evening, hunt morning, scout.
Mm-hmm.
Hunt evening, hunt morning, scout. You know, so you give that spot a full chance, a 24-hour period, you know, prime time slot, whatever, and move on. So, I mean, typically, if you're on a field edge and it's super hot, well, bucks don't just hit scrapes on field edges in the evening. Bucks just don't eat in field edges on the evening. Those bucks come out to that field, they migrate out there, they eat all night. A lot of times they ain't even getting into the woods until I've killed a lot of deer on field edges 7:15 in the evening, right when the sun comes up. Mm-hmm. They were out in the field moseying around.
You mean in the morning?
Yeah. In the morning. So, you know, that's kind of the pattern. You know, they go out, they feed, you know, they meander, they hang out. Sometimes they even bed up in the food source, you know, at night. You slip in behind.
And you're talking a big field. I mean, something that's like they're way out in the field.
You can do it with kill plots too. I mean, it's all about. I mean, if those deer, especially now, and we're talking about not using any other sort of source of scouting. You implement your cameras in there. Well, if you got a camera on the field edge in a hot spot, you're going to know when those deer are there.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
So that's what I'm getting at. It's all situational. A new farm, you want to be hunting sign, whether it's morning or evening. If you get there in the evening and you scout a field and there's hot sign on the field edge, are you going to not sit the field edge in the morning because you don't think you can get in there? Does that make any sense?
I don't know. I've never really thought about it like that.
Exactly. So, I mean, so you just, like I said, sometimes I think it's simpler than people think it is. Like, you know, I mean, sometimes people just start to get in their own heads. Like,
I guess the thing for me is like it seems like from all the trail camera data I've gone through, it seems like if a big deer's using a field edge in the morning, they're usually off the field edge by daylight. Just from what I've seen.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Like, you talking like scrape? On scrape?
Yeah, like say like a scrape. They'll hit that scrape, and then
so you're saying they're hitting the scrape in pitch black?
Yeah, like not pitch black, but maybe like an hour before daylight, and they're kind of camped out on the edge of the field, and then as it's kind of getting gray light, like they're going into that transition area. So in my mind, I'm like, well, why not?
How do you know they're going in that transition area?
They're going back to bed.
How do you know if they're hitting a scrape on the field edge?
I got a lot of cameras.
Oh, so you're seeing them on a different camera than.
I'm just saying I've seen that a lot. So it's like, well, why wouldn't you just set up in that transition area? Because if I go in there an hour before daylight, I got a good chance of bumping that deer off that field.
You just proved my point. So you did your homework. You found out that deer was hitting a scrape before daylight, and then he was going to be in the transition area. Why wasn't he dead? Well, you knew exactly what he was doing.
Because I checked the camera 2 weeks after he was doing this. But what I'm saying is, that's just an example.
To answer your question, right there, I wouldn't hunt that field edge in the morning then if I had the knowledge that he was in the transition area. You know what I'm saying? What I was saying.
Situational.
Exactly. It's situational. It really is.
But I'm saying, okay, if I didn't have cameras there,
yep.
and I just assumed, like, yeah, he's hitting that field edge scrape. And I went in there without having a camera, just like, well, he's hitting the field edge scrape. So I go in there, I would have bumped that deer off the field in the morning. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you might have bumped him off the field, and he might have came back and made that scrape later in the daylight. You might have killed him.
That's true.
I mean, you know, you might see Sasquatch going in the woods, but when you start talking about mights and what ifs, you know, why are we doing that? You know,
so you've killed quite a bit of deer. I mean, you've killed some deer on field edges in the morning.
Yes.
Interesting. But most of your deer in the mornings are in bedding areas, correct?
Yes. Or transition, but the biggest thing is people just don't.
Well, let me ask you this.
They like evenings. Everybody likes that textbook. I'm going to go sit a field edge and have a deer come out the food source.
I'll tell you this. I don't know that it's that, because for me, I love mornings. Yeah. I love them, but sometimes it's like
you don't feel confident where you're at.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's
like I don't know what to do. Like, what do I do here?
Yeah, exactly. And that's a different story.
Guys that we have on this video series will hunt 5 days in October. Literally, because they're like, well, I only hunt basically if the stars align. Like, if I only hunt right after a cold front, you know, like with rising pressure, and then like I've got that deer from last year so pegged that I don't see any reason to go in there until the conditions are perfect.
Well, and that's a different story right there. See, you just disclosed some more information to me. These guys are on, now that guy you're just talking about is on a specific deer that he knows where he is, he knows what he's doing, and he's pretty confident he's going to kill him at a certain time of year. That's a whole different story.
Yeah.
I'm just talking, what I'm talking about, I mean, now I wouldn't wait. If I knew where that deer was, he'd be dead in early October in the morning.
Yeah.
I don't get why you're going to wait on it if you know where he is. Now, if you know where he is and you can't get in there until you got an east wind, different story. Then you know you wait till that east wind. You know, you don't want to risk it. So there is, you don't want to be reckless, but that's situational. That's that guy having a deer pinned down.
I guess the thing, just my question for understanding is like, okay, if you don't have all of the answers, and most of the time you don't, or you'd be dead already.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you don't have all the answers, how can you know? Like, how can you
know what?
How can you know you're not going to hurt yourself more than
up in the morning? Yeah. I think that's from what you've been hearing from people. I mean, to me, it doesn't make sense. Like I said, if you're on a specific deer, it's a different story. I mean, if you know what he's doing and you don't want to mess up his pattern, yeah, that makes sense. But like I said, in that situation, I don't see why you wouldn't just. Why wait until a buck gets squirrely to go hunt him? Yeah. I mean, why not hunt him when he's in a pattern and when you know what he's doing? Does that make any these guys talking about waiting until November to start hunting?
And I guess too, like remember that deer last year in Missouri, early season. Remember Matt had that deer on camera that every morning was sitting that scrape on the field edge? Mm-hmm. Right there, okay? In that situation, I totally agree. It's like, well, yeah, duh.
Right there. And that was a field edge?
Yeah.
In the morning, that deer was wrong.
And that I get, because it wasn't even like transition daylight. He was there at like 8:30 in the morning.
Exactly.
Hanging out. But what I'm getting at is if you just don't know, like, how do you just go in blind? Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you don't know.
We're going back to what I said right off the bat. You don't go in blind. You're always confident where you're going. You're in a good spot. So there is no going in blind.
But how do you know, like,
I'm missing it.
Just because you're finding sign, though, like, how do you know, like, okay, well, the deer are going to be over there, and then I can come in the morning. You know what I mean? That's the part that's like.
Well, a lot of that. Well, the sign will tell you most of that, but then you have to use your knowledge of just basic knowledge of what you think the deer is doing. You know, you look at aerials, you analyze the situation, you look at where the food sources are, you know, time of year, what do you think they're eating? I mean, if, you know, there's a process of elimination that you can go through even without physically seeing it. Like, I can look at an aerial and just say, okay, well, deer are probably, you know, doing this, feeding here, bedding somewhere in this general area. That's probably, would you agree?
Yeah.
So you could probably do that. Now, when you get in there and you pin down, now you have an area you looked at that you say, okay, it's probably happening here, and you find a sign of these deer that are moving through there, well, then you know, okay, these deer are coming through here. Well, if you know that, you know, and you still have that idea where they're feeding, you maybe go check that out, check out the food source. I mean, the sign shows that the deer are there every night, then they are. So you just have to put the pieces of the puzzle together and then dive into it.
No, I get that. I guess it's just, I don't know, it is situational because...
And it is, too.
And remember, like, so much of, like, what my belief system has come from is the big woods where it's like, they could be anywhere.
And that's more reason to just hunt sign.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because then when there's that much timber and it's that vast, I think it is harder. It's not like a farm country setting where you got woodlots and fields and...
And that's what I always talk about. It's like, okay, well... How do I know I'm not walking up and bumping that deer like on my way in? Because I don't know. He could be on my way in. Like,
yeah, he could be.
And then it's like, were you gonna let that stop you? Like,
no, you shouldn't. That's what I'm saying. Who cares?
Then you try to pick like the path of least resistance to get in. You know what I mean? So like for instance, some of the spots where I hunt, it's like, okay, well, there's a great sign right here, 100 yards off the road. Great sign, and there's also a great sign 1.5 miles from the road. But that 100-yard off the road sign, I can just hike right up that ridge and like get in the stand. My chances of bumping that deer on the way in are so little. You know what I mean? If a deer's kind of like, say it's pre-rut, right? Deer's starting to cruise a little bit.
Yeah.
He's making sign over here. He's making sign over here. He's making sign over here, right? Well, this spot is 100 yards off the road, and I know it's from the same deer. I got pictures of them there. This spot's 100 yards off the road. I can hike up one ridge and be in that stand. My scent's blowing out right where I came from. You know what I mean? Like that's where you need to hunt that deer, right?
You're running cameras on all these spots, correct?
Yeah.
You're getting pictures of that deer on all these
sporadically,
spots.
But yes, at all the spots.
Well, then you analyze when your pictures are, and I mean, obviously you hunt.
There's no rhyme or reason. Like
no
honestly,
rhyme or reason whatsoever.
There's no freaking rhyme or reason. Like you'll get an edge of daylight picture of him here at this scrape, and then like 3 days later he'll be over here, and then I'll be back over here, and then he's over there. Like there's no.
Then you start bouncing.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Do you bounce, or you just sit in that one area of sign and just wait on him?
I know guys who do both things. I can't sit in the same tree and wait for him. I can't do that.
No.
That's just no.
And I agree in most situations. It's just like I feel like in that area it might be different logic.
And it's hard too without being there. I mean, I might say like, oh, I do this, but then I get there like, and I see a different. It like I said, it's so you got to take it as it. You know, I mean, it's different. Every situation is different. Every deer is different. So
yeah, but I guess the logic there is like, okay, if you got two pinballs being freaking bounced around, the chances of them lining up.
But listen, can you hunt every spot with every wind? No, you can't, right? I know you probably.
Well, I'll
could.
be honest with you, dude.
Could you?
Down there, you can't hunt any spot with any wind because there's no freaking clue what the wind's actually going to be doing whenever you're getting up there.
There's.
I'm telling you.
So you're telling me you never played the wind when you hunted that?
I play the wind every single time, and every single time it is doing something completely freaking whacked off the wall. Like it'll go this way for 5 minutes, and then it's coming back this way, and then it's shooting straight up in the air, and then it's coming down.
And that's some. I mean, there's a spot like that I found on a farm I hunt a couple years ago, where it's in between this big steep draw, and the wind's fine, and then there's a backdraft that comes up every so often, and unfortunately,
and that's the way it is everywhere.
Unfortunately, that's something you have to learn from the spot, or maybe even two spots like that. Mornings are even better for you.
Yeah,
and you got
a rising thermal.
You got the thermals in your favor, so.
In a high pressure.
And I mean, if you can pin them down, evenings can be better for you because if you do have that steep a drop in the land, your scent will get sucked away pretty quick. I mean, so again, it's looking at the spot. But let's say you're getting north winds. That might eliminate two of those pinball spots that the deer's going through.
Yeah.
There's spots I got that I know I cannot go in there unless the weather app says, like, variable, or what does it say when the wind is so minimal that
light and variable?
Yeah, I just know that I need to hit there. I need to be there in the morning, and I need the wind to be so minimal to where it's just lifting up.
Yeah.
And that's the only way I can hunt it, because if you have any sort of direction of wind, they somehow bust you. And that's something you unfortunately figure out from hunting that spot. But what are you going to do, not hunt there? I mean, when the sign's great. I killed a deer in that stand.
I mean, do you
Dad actually told me, you can't hunt down there. You'll never get away with it. Yeah, that was down there. It was in that, it needed to be a south wind, and it needed to be dead calm. Like, it just...
Well, if it's dead calm, does the south wind really matter?
What's that?
If it's dead calm, does the south
No,
wind...
but it's better to have that variable, just because you always want to have, you know, if your
you
winds
do get a gust or two, then...
Well, typically, with what the wind's been doing, or cold front, I guess to answer your question, if it was that calm, it probably wouldn't matter, but I tried to hunt it with a south wind, which would be the best for it, but it was too hard of a south wind, and it started eddying down there in that canyon, so it was...
But let me ask you this, though, like, I mean, when you start hunting, do you notice it affecting the deer?
It can. I mean, and that all
like,
depends,
because you're moving a lot, like you're...
it can definitely affect the deer. That's why you got to be smart about how you access your spots too. So there's you know, I had, you know, sometimes you do that when you constantly are kicking deer in the same area over and over, like just time after time after time. Yeah, it will affect. I believe it will affect their movement. But that's why, I mean, if you're entering and exiting properly, I mean, when you're coming out in the pitch black, I mean, you bump a deer a little bit, they don't freaking know. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, it's not. Now, when you're coming out every night and, you know, riding a four-wheeler through the middle of the field, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it really makes a... So it can affect it, but that's why you want to have your... I think you want to have your entrance and exit strategy in, too.
Talk about, like, the circuit, right? Like, your dad used to talk about that.
The circuit?
It's like what you were talking about earlier. Is like setting up that evening, morning.
Yeah, that was always kind of...
And then even like midday, he talked about having like even separate stands midday sometimes in the rut, right? He used to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that just comes down to the point of not wanting to, you know, being in a fresh spot. I mean, so if you're on an area, and this is too... like when you're not utilizing cameras a lot, and honestly, I mean, I love cameras, and they're really nice to get intel, but a lot of times you cannot see what's really going on, because now it's different when if you're running 7 million cameras.
Yeah.
But when you got a couple cameras around and people let that be the sole judge of
where they hunt,
it's a little...
We've talked about that before.
It's a little
misleading.
It is. It's very... I mean, I've literally watched slammers walk, just skirt cameras, and I would have, you know, and you're thinking, oh, I never got a picture of him, he can't be over there. I mean, that's not always the case either. So that comes back to a time of, you know, where, let's say you don't have any cameras out, and your only way of seeing the woods is scouting and hunting. So you want to get as many spots as you can. You want to cover some ground. You want to see what's going on. You know, you want to find good sign constantly. So, you know, and virgin sits are always the best. When you're in an uncontaminated area, fresh sign, I mean, that's back to what I talked about before. You always be in a spot where you think it could happen, because if you're not, so the idea is getting in that spot. Get in that spot, hunt it again. I mean, you don't want to be hanging and hunting every morning in the dark. You just can't. It's not going to be efficient, and it's not going to be practical. So get that.
Do you ever hang and hunt in the morning?
I've done it a few times, but no.
It sucks, right?
I typically, if I hang and hunt, it's in the evening, and then I'll hunt that stand again in the morning.
Gotcha.
Or, I mean, if I have a tree that I was there the day before, cleared it out, know exactly where it is, then I'll do it. But I'd still rather not haul a stand in the morning. I do a lot of scouting and then just hang and hunt for an evening hunt. But
yeah.
But then that way, you know, you're getting the evening movement.
You ever just hang like sometimes, like when we were in Missouri last year, like we'll scout and then like you'll go ahead and hang a stand for tomorrow morning too, right? While you're there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, how are you, like, if it's a virgin ground, like how are you setting up that morning stand differently than you're setting up, or is it just...
No, it's the same stand is what I'm getting at.
Oh, I got you.
So yeah, just give it 2 shots. Now, if you got all the time in the world and you can set 3 stands and you want to start picking, then it's a different story. But I mean, when you're talking about like power hunting a place, I mean, it's kind of, you know, the way it's worked for me, and for him.
How long does it take? I mean, for you typically, like you're hunting all October, right? Like this year.
This
year's tough, right? Like
this year's been a little slower, but it's all, like I said, all situational. We don't, you know, I mean, there's a,
like how long? Okay, you're hunting here, right? How long before like nothing new's going on with this one of the deer you're after this year? Like how long before like, man, it's not really picking up? Like, let me slide over to Illinois or do something different for a little while, like. Because you said, if I don't feel like it's going to happen, then I don't want to go hunt, right?
Yeah.
So how long do you, like, beat around the bush until it's like, I don't feel like I'm getting any closer, like, for you? I mean, because if you hunt a stand once and you don't see anything, that you're not hunting again, right?
Not always. I mean, it's situational. If I know that the buck I'm trying to kill is coming by that stand, just because I hunted it once and I didn't see him,
I'm just saying for like a exploratory sit, like you're in a new.
We're talking a new piece here. Yeah, you can come back to that stand if you want, but I mean, you have to make a choice. You can camp out on that stand and wait for something to show up, or you can keep moving. It's just a matter of what kind of guy you are. You know, like I said, I can't even sit more than a couple hours in the stand at a time, so I'm not going to just sit there and watch the same scenery over and over and over. I'd rather be proactive.
Yeah.
You can get it done both ways, but I mean, especially if you're just trying to connect with something, or if there's multiple bucks there, that's the best way to do it. Now, if you're on a certain deer, it changes the game because it's situational.
Yeah. What are you typically finding, like, because you're saying that you don't see bucks bedding in the same kind of stuff a lot. Like, you don't see them bedding in the same place very often, right?
Well, it depends on where you are. You do. I mean, I think there's bedding areas that deer in general usually bed.
Hold deer?
Yeah, that hold deer to bed.
So what kind of
what?
Let's talk about bedding areas, like identifying that buck's bedding area.
A bedding area can just be a buck bed in the middle of, I mean, it could, a bed. I mean, you know, they sort of bed stage. Like you said, you can find a bedding area in an alfalfa strip. They're bedding in the middle of the night. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's not.
Well, obviously that's not like the one that you're interested in.
No, but I'm just getting at, like, you know, you could have a bedding area that was just simply a bed. I mean, he could be just bedding in there.
Yeah, but talk about like his core, his lair. You know what I mean?
That comes down to temperament of the deer too. I mean, I've been in bedding areas. You can literally smell
tarsal gland.
I mean, you can just, oh my god, like it's his area. I mean, it's gnarled up, it's mangled. I mean, there's just sign of him everywhere. You know, there's other deer that I've also been on deer that literally are on this little peninsula inside a bunch of timber, and it's just one bed continuously matted down in different directions. I mean, and you could tell, like, oh, nothing was rubbed, nothing was shredded up, nothing. I mean, but
how do you know?
That's what he was there.
You witnessed it?
I was there looking at it. I could see nothing was shredded up.
Yeah, but how do you know that was his bed? Like, obviously you know because you killed him, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I killed that deer.
But I'm saying, like, how would you have known, like, if you didn't witness that?
Know it was that deer?
Yeah.
You got to take the sign in the timber. That's how you know it's a good deer. There's been numerous times where I've gotten on bedding areas, did the whole ball of wax, got in there, ready to kill, you know, had that deer come in, and he wasn't big enough. That happens all the time. I mean, I've had 150-inch deer, 140-inch deer that completely mangle an area. I thought, oh, I'm gonna kill a slammer, and it wasn't. So that happens too. But you know, I mean, that's how you know.
Yeah.
Dad's always preached be aggressive, and then, you know, even when you're preaching be aggressive, well, to a guy that doesn't, you know,
have finesse.
Yeah, it's different because you can't put everything in a nutshell, but. I mean, I would definitely say that we are more aggressive style hunters. I mean,
absolutely.
Hands down. It's kind of like I told you about that one deer who had such a dominant personality that you could actually, it made him so easy to kill because he was that dominant. You know? Mr. Clean? No, that deer, he actually never ended up getting killed. He wasn't on the hit list per se or whatever, but he would literally stand his ground. I mean, he was you know, you'd be clearing out a tree or something and break some branches, and he would start growling at you. Like, I mean, he just, anything, every buck that year had a busted rack. I mean, he would make his presence known, and I mean, if you bumped him out of an area, he'd come right back. Like he's like, that's my area. He got, you know, it's just different. I mean, they act different. It's and there's also timid. I've seen big, beautiful typicals that back down from a fight with a freaking glorified basket rack. I mean, just temperament, man. They don't know what they got in their head. They don't got mirrors.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all about their attitude.
Yeah.
And maybe this is just always because Dad never did, and I kind of, you know, but I mean, I've hit the horns in the past, you know, in November, just, you know, but as far as grunting goes, any sort of deer scents or lures or, you know, scrape drippers or gadgets or any, just don't use them. I mean, that just never did. I just feel like with my style of hunting, and it's all about, I feel like you're screwing up your chances more than you're helping them, maybe. I mean,
yeah.
You know, I've scared away deer hitting horns together. Literally, like,
kinda,
you know, it goes
raping a turkey. You know, there's certain turkeys that come running in.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to that temperament thing. Well, you don't know if you're rattling at the boss buck or if he might hear the sound of horns and be like, oh, I'm not getting in a fight, and take the hell off. You know.
Yeah. Scoop his girl up and.
Yeah, I mean, scents. It's just, I don't know, maybe. But those are rut hunters too. I mean, and grunts and I would rather assassinate that deer without having any inkling that I'm there than give up my location and start grunting. And you start grunting and rattling, everything knows where you're at.
Yeah.
Anything in the area knows right where it came from. So why even take that chance of, I mean, having them run in, catch a handcuff, you know, got your bow ready. I mean,
yeah,
it's the same thing too. I mean, I'm always setups too, close setups, man. Nice and close, nice and tight, 10-yard shots. You know, I think the farthest I ever killed a deer was about 20 yards. And when you're hunting in the timber and in the morning and stuff too, you don't get those, you know, 40-yard shots or anything like that. So it just makes a difference. But
let's talk about scrape hunting.
Yeah. So I mean, I think scrape hunting's great. I mean, it's a very good way to.
How many big bucks have you killed in scrapes? Would you say?
A few. And I that one in Illinois, actually, that big one I hit that I didn't get was actually making a scrape when I shot it.
But were you hunting that because it was a scrape? Like that?
Oh yeah. Oh, that definitely had an influence on where I hung my stand, no doubt.
Yeah.
So that was a situation where I scouted, found out this deer was coming to this field. Well, then came the question of, okay, well, where do I hunt him in this field? I walked the whole perimeter of the field. I checked what was going on. I seen where the tracks were coming out. I seen what was going on in the field as far as deer movement goes. And I found the only 2 scrapes on the trail. I found the only 2 scrapes or active scrapes on the field. And I picked the one that was good for my win.
Yeah.
Boom. And he hit the first one before he even came to mine. So he was dominant. He was coming out there. He was marking both those scrapes. They were both his. I couldn't hunt that one because the wind didn't allow me to. So I used the process of elimination.
So, okay, here's where I got
exactly. Now I found the trail he was coming out.
And then he came out and just came straight towards you.
Nope.
Right?
I found the trail that he was coming out to the field on. And, you know, I didn't, and then I thought to myself, well.
How did you know that tracks?
Well, yeah, I speculated he was, I mean, it was the busiest part coming out to the field, just so, and that was exactly where he came out, so I was right on that, but, and then I thought, okay, well, do I want to sit this trail, or do I want to sit the scrape, you know? Well, scrapes this time of year are hot, you know, they're wanting to mark that. He could mosey in on a different trail. I wasn't 100% sure, but I was pretty damn sure he'd hit that.
There's only 2 scrapes.
Yeah, I was pretty damn sure he'd hit those scrapes.
If he hits one scrape, he's probably going to hit the other scrape. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, yeah, so he ended up coming from that trail, walked over, or he ate a little bit, actually, you know, browsing the field, hit the first scrape, and then beelined from the first one to the second one. Like, that was his route. You know, I mean, so the buck I killed just a couple years ago in Iowa, another example of just scouting and seeing what's going on. So there's a corner of the property that typically gets lit up in late October with scrapes. It's just a good field edge, a lot of low hanging branches, and prime area for scrapes. So it's something that I check daily.
Yeah.
I just keep checking it. Well, it was ice cold for the longest time, and then all of a sudden one day I went over there and everything was just pounded. Well, I jumped there the next day and killed that big white buck. I mean, you know, when it turns on, it turns on. So yeah, scrape hunting, even in the rut too. I mean, if deer are cruising, they come across a scrape, or they come across an area where, you know, that mother buck's sensor in it and they got to cover it up.
I mean, most of the bucks you're shooting on scrapes, like I feel like a lot of times you could say, like, in a bedding area, like right on the edge of a bedding area, like there's probably going to be a scrape there. You know what I mean? But you're really hunting the bedding area. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
like, are you scrape hunting then, or are you bedding area hunting? You know what I mean? That's,
well, I just always like to.
But that's
it's the same thing. Are you hunting on a food source, or are you scrape
exactly? And so it's like,
I'm talking specifically scrape hunting.
You're hunting the food source, but what dictates where your actual stand setup is, like what you're actually.
I think you're hunting the scrape.
Really?
When that time of the year, what you're doing is you're getting on that field edge because you know that buck's marking territory. You're not getting it on there because you know he's coming out and eating in the field.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times they don't.
But he's marking it there because it's the food source and he knows all the does are going to be there.
I mean.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that doesn't mean.
Because otherwise, yeah.
Well, that's just that's tomato. I mean, if you want to call it hunting, but if you want to specifically, you know, target scrapes, well, you're setting a stand to shoot that scrape.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's why that time of year I think is so wild. I mean, them deer just really want to get out and mark their territory. I firmly believe from personal experience that crowding the shoulder is a fool's game. Why go for that heart shot or that I mean, why tuck the shoulder that hard when there's a possibility you hit it and you don't get that deer? Slide the arrow back a little bit and go for that liver area. Because if you hit that liver, I mean, anywhere in that's all kill zone. You're going to get rear lung, you know, you're going to get liver, you're going to whatever. I mean, I'd rather take a gut shot than a shoulder shot. Yeah. Any day of the week.
A gut shot deer is going to lay down within 200 yards, no doubt.
Yeah. Well, and if you hit a deer's liver, I mean, liver filters all the toxins.
And you break the diaphragm.
That deer is dying.
There's no lung pressure. You know what I mean? Like, you break that diaphragm, there's nothing.
Oh, they're dead. Yeah. They will die. I mean, they might go a little far, but you're going to have good blood, too, because that liver is filtering all the, you know. So, I do believe, I think that's I mean, for guys starting out, too, and for just I learned it the hard way, man. It took 2 deer, but 2 very big deer for me to, why? Slide it back. What does it matter? I've had deer run farther with heart shots than they ever do with a liver shot.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you get both lungs. I mean, it's a little different story, but okay. So after I hit that 12, got a bad shot on it. You know, bad course of events. Tracked it for a couple days, and you know, I wasn't going to dwell on it, so I started scouting. You know, I was hunting that property for like 14 days before I got a look at that 12-pointer. So, I mean, I didn't know.
How do you do that and not lose hope? Just because you know honestly, that area is so good?
No, honestly, I think it's discipline because you can give up, but I mean, it's just if you keep at it
straight
and persistent.
Back.
Yeah, bouncing. And I even have the footage.
Back from home and back, or like 14 days.
I think I was there for like 7, and I came back because I had a business meeting. I came back for a couple days, and I was back there, and it was the next like full week.
Gotcha.
You know, I mean, I'm there to kill, man. I'm there to hunt something down and kill it. So I'm gonna be hunting every day, and you know, the odds of there being absolutely nothing big there is very slim. And as the season goes on a little bit more, I know that more deer are going to come in and start moving. You know.
All right, so you hunted 14 days, Big 12, that whole situation.
Well, yeah, and I even have the film. I remember being in the timber and finally, I mean, you know, looking over and he's coming through. Because the morning before, when I first seen him, and I had him at like 20 yards and couldn't get a shot because it was so thick. But that let me know he was there, and that spurred me to go scout where he came from. Mm-hmm. So I was in the morning back in the timber. I had an idea where he was bedded, but he didn't bed by me. He kept going, you know. He went past me. So I'm like, well, where can I hunt this deer in the evening? I got to get on him in the morning and evening. You know, this is the deer I got to kill. Yeah. So I wasn't going to mess around with any other area. Now I've taken a 600-acre farm and brought it down to 50 acres and a food source. That helped me out a lot. Well, I went and I scouted the food source that I thought he was coming from, you know, just kind of knowing the area. That's when I found the trail. But that's beside the point. Well, I never got to look at that 10 beforehand that I ended up shooting after the 12. that was just, again, after the 12, and I couldn't find him. Was kind of bummed and bent out of shape a little bit, but life must go on, right? I mean, so I just started scouting, started looking around, and actually kicked that deer off his bed the morning after I gave up this I tracked him for 2 days and said, screw it, I'm just going to pound the ground in the timber in a different area. Kicked him off a knob. He was not there prior, because I was hunting there for 14 days. That deer was not there. He moved in. It was late October. I think that deer ended up dying. It could have been that deer getting shot. Who knows?
Yeah.
Anyway, this deer moved in. Maybe he knew the big boy was out of town, and that caused him to move in. But I set up on that bed for the following morning, and at like 7:15, strolled right in through there, and I shot him right before he could even get to it. So it's just, I think being in the moment and being persistent, and if I wouldn't have went out and scouted, I would have never found that bed. It's so. And if a guy were to say, "Well, I hunted in that area 6 times in the last 2 weeks, and I didn't see anything," well, dude, this week's a whole new week.
Yeah.
So it could be completely different than the last time you hunted it too. So
you said something about discipline. I think that's such a big part of it, because there's so many times for me I'm like, dude, I just feel burnt out. It's like,
it does, and you got to overcome that. It's like, honestly, I think my passion for training and stuff too really takes a play in it, because it does help me with discipline and being able to, I enjoy being out in the woods and the nature and the timber, and I love the sport of deer hunting, but I also look at it as, when I hunt. Like, I'm hunting hard. Like, I don't look at it as leisurely hunting. I'm trying to kill something, man. I'm on a mission. So it's, and sometimes too, even me getting up before I even go out in the morning just to train, like weight train for an hour.
That's ridiculous.
But it helps me. It's in a weird way. Like,
how much do you sleep at night? Like, how many hours on average?
I'd probably say, like, I think I run best in like 5 hours.
Yeah, see, I'm more like 9.
Yeah, see, that's too much for me. I'll get like groggy.
And that's the thing, like, when you're hunting like that, you can't fit.
But even
and 9's it's probably like 7.
And you got to think too. Now you don't always have all the time in the world.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Because that's what I'm saying. It's like, I know me. Like, 8 hours is what I need.
Yeah.
You can't get 8 hours when you're hunting like that. You know what I mean? Like, when you have a family, because then you got to go home and hang out with the kids.
Exactly.
You got to do that whole thing.
Yep.
And
see, that's like right now. So I wake up, probably about 3 in the morning. Weight train for a couple hours, and then I go hit the morning post. Mm-hmm. Well, then I got to get out of the stand in the morning, go to work, put in time at work, and then make it back. Now when daylight saving time hits and I lose an hour, I'm screwed. Then I got to readjust my whole situation. But that's just my daily hunting. That's not when I go. Then when I travel somewhere, then it's like balls to the wall.
Yeah.
So I actually get upset because I can't scout as much as I need to right now.
Yeah.
Just because there's not the time for it.
Well, what would you say to, like, and honestly, like, at the end of the day, what would you say to the guy that, like, is like, well, I only get 1 week of vacation a year? And at the end of the day, you can say, like, well, you need to find another job if it's that serious to you.
Here's
you know
what
I mean? Like,
it's like, and I go back to this too, but it's like that iconic. It's that iconic thing. Well, I don't have time to work out every day. You need to make time.
Well, Cody only kills big bucks because he can hunt.
And anybody can say that. I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
I've had guys that have literally, and I've heard it about numerous. Oh, well, they're only killing big deer because they're on properties with. Dude, a lot of these guys, you could put them on a property with that many big deer, and they would
mess.
They would get eaten alive.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have any idea, and they never kill them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not. But I would say, sometimes, if you can only get out for a certain amount of time, you can only get out for a certain amount of time. But, some people work in the city, but I knew guys who, were putting in hours and, would literally, rush freaking straight from work into the hunting clothes, into the woods, just to get an extra day in the woods. So, how bad do you want it?
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. And yeah, there's certain things that like you said, you have priorities. You can't, but that's fine. That's a different story.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
How long do you think it takes? Like, okay, so you hop in, like say you go out to Illinois. Like, if there is a big deer, how long typically is it taking you to figure that out? Like, 3-4 days.
Yeah, it can be different every time. Like I said, that big 12.
Like if he's not there,
Yeah,
obviously
yeah,
it takes a lot
yeah.
longer. But say he is there. And
I'd
obviously you're looking for a different caliber deer, but I'm just saying a mature deer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, to find out if
Say it's a
mature deer's there.
150-inch deer, whatever.
Yeah, I would say to be on the safe side a couple days. I mean, you can get a pretty good idea what's. I mean, because you got to think, that gives you at least 4 sits in the timber. I mean, or just to see what's going on.
Yeah.
A couple days to walk around and look at it. So, and it can change all the time. So.